This is the Nomad 2 from Velotric. It's the brand's redesigned fat tire e-bike that's absolutely packed with updates and new features. There are a huge range of options you can access through the bike's display menu or the Velotric app to tailor how it feels and how fast it goes. So is this the most customizable fat tire e-bike on the market? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, where we're known for extremely detailed reviews based on real-world performance tests. I'm John, and I'll be taking you through the Nomad 2's review today. Before we jump in, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and if this video helps you in your buying decision, please also consider using the affiliate link in the video description if or when you do make a purchase. We earn commissions from sales that help to support all the time and effort we put into our work, and we appreciate your help in keeping reviews like this one coming. But back to business, let's start things off by talking about a few highlights that stood out to us about the Nomad 2. First things first, we absolutely love the responsive feel of this bike's powerful 750 watt rear hub motor. Now, there are 3 different ranges of power for the Nomad's 5 pedal assist settings that range from extremely natural feeling and subtle to remarkably easy and strong. Regardless of which feeling you prefer, the motor delivers power and adapts to changes in your pedaling super quickly thanks to its dialed-in torque sensor. We've critiqued Velotric's torque sensors in the past for not being quite as responsive as we'd have liked, so we're really happy to see that the brand took that feedback and made huge improvements. Next, I want to talk about all the customization options that the Nomad offers. So in addition to those 3 power ranges I mentioned, its maximum speed can be set anywhere from 12 to 28 miles per hour, and you can adjust the throttle and pedal assist speed separately. It also gives you the option to switch between torque and cadence sensing modes, so if you like active pedaling, you can choose the torque mode, but if you prefer a more relaxed and low effort experience, you can go with the cadence mode. You even get to choose how the brake light functions when you squeeze the brake levers, and the bottom line is that there just aren't that many bikes out there that give you this degree of control. Finally, I've got to say that this bike has one of the smoothest rides I have ever experienced, and that's a combination of a bunch of different factors. For starters, there's a lockout suspension fork with 100 millimeters of travel and preload adjustment. There's a rocker-style suspension seat post with 50 millimeters of travel. There's a huge cruiser-style saddle. And then, of course, there are the bike's 26-inch by 4-inch Kenda fat tires that add even more cushion to the ride. If comfort is a concern to you, stick around because you're not going to want to miss everything this bike has to offer. To run through the rest of the bike's specs and components, its 750 watt motor is paired with a 48 volt, 706 watt hour battery that's fully integrated into the down tube and painted to match the frame. The battery is also UL 2271 certified, and it has an IPX7 waterproof rating. Moving on, there's an 8-speed Shimano Acera drivetrain with a 48-tooth chainring and an 11 to 40-tooth cassette. There's a set of 2-piston Tektro TDK 171 hydraulic disc brakes with a 203mm rotor on the front wheel and a 180mm rotor on the rear. Both wheels have full coverage plastic fenders, and then there's a high-capacity MIK HD cargo rack over the rear wheel. It has a 66-pound carrying capacity, and it's compatible with a variety of third-party accessories, including storage bags and child seats. There's an integrated taillight with brake light functionality and turn signals mounted to the cargo rack, and then a 500 lumen headlight mounted to the handlebars up front. Now, the handlebars will differ depending on both the frame size and frame style. I'm gonna primarily focus on this step-through or ST model that has a 16-inch standover height and no top tube. This version of the bike has curved cruiser-style handlebars. There's also this high-step frame style with either a 28.5 or 29.5 inch standover height, depending on frame size, and slightly less curved handlebars. These aren't quite flat bars. There's a good ergonomic curve to them, but they're not nearly as swept back as those on the ST model. Regardless of the frame style, the regular size frame comes with 680mm handlebars, while those on the large measure 700mm wide. Either way, the bike has locking ergonomic rubber grips. There's a trigger-style shifter for the 8-speed drivetrain on the right handlebar. The left side has the bike's button panel and throttle lever, and there's also a central full-color display. A few final details should wrap things up. The Nomad 2 is UL 2849 certified, and it has an overall IPX6 water-resistant rating. It weighs 84 pounds, including a 10-pound battery. It has a massive total payload capacity of 505 pounds. It ships as a Class 2 e-bike with throttle and pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, and its speed and other customization options can be accessed either through the display menu or the Velotric app. And finally, there are 5 total color options for the Nomad 2. The high-step model comes in Midnight Blue and Sage, while the ST model here comes in this cranberry color, as well as Midnight Blue, Oliver, and Slate. That should cover all the basics, so let's dive into our test sections and see how this bike stacks up against other fat tire e-bikes we've reviewed. All right, starting things off with our brake test, we brought the Nomad 2 up to its Class 2 speed limit of 20 miles per hour before applying the brakes, and then we measured the distance the bike traveled before coming to a complete stop. We did the same thing 3 times, and the average of those results was 20 feet and 9 inches. Now, that's a super impressive result for a fat tire e-bike. This style tends to be on the heavy side, which makes them more difficult than other styles of bike to slow down, and at 84 pounds, this one is actually a bit heavier than average. But at least at the time of filming, other fat bikes we've tested averaged 22 feet and 9 inches, making the Nomad 2 2 feet better than average. There's one key difference between this bike and most others we've tested, and that is its larger front brake rotor. In most cases, we've seen this or similar brake systems paired with 180mm rotors on both wheels, but the Nomad 2's 203mm rotor up front gives it a step up in stopping power. Larger rotors provide more leverage when braking force is applied, so that helped to offset the Nomad's weight and give it a better than average result. I think the extra force was noticeable going by feel as well. I wouldn't say this bike can stop on a dime, but there's definitely plenty of power here. I think this brake system is a great pairing with this bike, and I also really liked how stable and straight the bike stayed when it was coming to a stop. So overall, the Nomad 2 passes this test with flying colors. In our speed test, the goal is to see if a bike can reach its advertised speeds, and we also want to get a feel for how the bike behaves in each of its pedal assist settings. In most cases, that only requires a couple of passes on a flat section of our local shared use paths, but this bike was a bit more complicated. Earlier, I mentioned the 3 different ranges of power for the bike's pedal assist system. So those are Eco, Trail, and Boost modes, and each have 5 subsequent assist levels for a total of 15. There's also the ability to switch between torque and cadence sensing modes, and the ability to make the bike a Class 3 with pedal assist up to 28 miles per hour. Doing 12 speed tests felt like a bit much, so I just stuck with Boost mode, and I did both Class 2 and Class 3 tests using both torque and cadence sensing modes. Let's hit the bike paths and see what happened. We can also see how quickly the throttle accelerates, and then we can talk more about the results once we get back here. All right, so we're here for a speed test on the Nomad 2. We're gonna start things off with a Class 2 cadence sensor mode test, and then we will progress through a Class 3 cadence test, and then a Class 2 and 3 torque sensor test. So we're gonna use the Boost riding mode for all 3 of these. That's the most powerful. But anyway, starting things off with no pedal assist, and I'm going kind of right around 9.5 miles per hour, between 9 and 9.5, I guess. Let's go up to PAS1. All right, so the motor kicked on. It's giving me just a little nudge, and there are going to be preset speed limits in the cadence sensor tests. So, you know, just with, as long as I'm moving the pedals, basically I'm going to be going up to those speed limits. I don't have to actually put any pressure on the pedals. So yeah, all right, 10 miles per hour is the limit for PAS1 here. Let's go up to PAS2. All right, slowly building power here, not too punchy, which is good. Kind of picking up to about 13 and a half miles per hour, and then we're kind of falling back down. So it seems like, all right, it seems like the motor wants it to kind of hang closer to 12. So we got like an initial surge and then more of like a standard consistent speed at 12 miles an hour. Let's go up to PAS3. All right, another nudge in power there. Definitely noticeable difference. Up to 15 miles per hour, so definitely cruising here. Okay, let's go up to PAS4. Up to 17 miles per hour. So these, you know, jumps in speed seem to be pretty consistent, nice and incremental. Feels intuitive. We'll see how they look on the graph, but let's finish things off in PAS5. Okay, definitely a noticeably larger jump there, a little bit more of a kick going up from 4 to 5, but we are at that 20 mile per hour Class 2 ceiling. All right, that looks good. Let's do the same thing in Class 3 mode. All right, we are back for a Class 3 test in the cadence sensing mode. So we're starting off in PAS1, definitely faster than where we were in the Class 2 mode test. We're going 14 miles per hour here. Let's go up to PAS2. All right, again, the power moving up from 1 to 2 is very gradual. We are picking up to, let's see, about 19 miles per hour. The motor shut off there. And then it's kind of maintaining, maybe more around 17 and a half. Well, still kind of dropping for that cruising speed. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, between 16 and a half and 17 seems to be the cruising speed for PAS2. Let's go up to PAS3. All right, bit of a little boost there. Up to 21 miles per hour, and that one's holding pretty consistent. All right, let's go up to PAS3. Definitely feeling more and more power kicking in with every step up. So we're up kind of between 23 and a half and 24 miles per hour. Feels appropriate. And then let's finish things off in PAS5. We're definitely cooking here. This thing is not holding back. All right, we are actually up over the Class 3 ceiling, up to about 31 and a half, 32. I'm gonna kind of call it here, going around this bend, just for the sake of safety. But yeah, clearly we exceeded the Class 3 limit a little bit, but hey, that was quite a bit of fun. Let's go and do the same tests in the torque sensing mode. All right, and we are back for another speed test here in torque sensing mode, starting off with the Class 2 test, and pedaling, yeah, kind of right around 9.5, maybe up to 10 miles per hour. Yeah, somewhere in there. All right, let's go up to PAS1. All right, and again, we are in the boost riding mode, so even here in the lowest assist level, I am feeling quite a bit of power. There would not be that much in eco or trail riding modes. So pretty effortlessly getting up to about 15 miles per hour here, maybe 15 and a half. Okay, let's go up to PAS2. There doesn't seem to be a huge difference between PAS1 and 2 in feel, but we are going faster. So up to, let's say 17 and a half, 18 miles per hour. That feels comfortable here in this setting. Feels appropriate. All right, let's go up to PAS3. Shift up to 6th gear. All right, here we are landing kind of right around 19 and a half miles per hour, pretty consistently. Going up a little bit because I'm going a slight downward grade here. Let's get around this bend, see if it kind of levels back out. Well, you know what? Okay, I guess PAS3, we are going to call it at 20 miles an hour. Actually up toward 21. Okay, let's go to PAS4. I wouldn't expect any difference here, really. Yeah, so we are at the Class 2 ceiling. I think any differences that we are seeing here really just kind of changes in the path. Little dips, little grade changes. Overall, we are pretty flat though. So, okay, let's go up to PAS5. And same thing. Yeah, okay, I mean, that's what I would expect. So let's do the same thing in the Class 3 mode. All right, we are back for our final speed test. This is gonna be the torque sensing mode in Class 3 settings, so maximum speed of 28 miles per hour. Let's see if we can hit it. So quite a bit of power already in PAS1, pretty comfortably going between 16 and a half and 17 miles per hour. Let's go up to PAS2. All right, again, not a huge difference there, but it was noticeable. I'd say probably the most noticeable jump between 1 and 2 here in the torque sensing Class 3 test. All right, so landing kind of right around 20 miles per hour, maybe 20 and a half. All right, let's go up to PAS3. Shift up again. We're in 7th gear. All right, we are up to about 24 miles per hour. Again, cruising very easily, not putting much pressure on the pedals. Let's say between 24 and 24 and a half. Let's go up to PAS 4 after we get around this bend. All right. Up to about 28 miles per hour. 27 and a half, 28. Okay, and then we'll finish things off in a PAS 5. Don't really expect much difference. Yeah, it feels about this. Oh, that's why I didn't actually bump up. Okay, there was a little extra boost there, and we are picking up a little extra speed. So interesting that the bike says 30 and my phone says 28 and a half or so. 29, yeah, okay, that seems reasonable. But anyway, we will call that our speed test. Let's go check out the throttle, and then we'll head back to the studio. All right, and then the last thing that we're gonna do here is a throttle acceleration test to see how quickly it takes to go from 0 to 20. We're in boost mode, the cadence sensing mode, PAS 5. Let's count in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so not punchy off the line, but I'd say, you know, nice and strong start, and then 19, 20 miles per hour, pretty fast getting up to speed there. All right, let's bounce back to the studio and take a look at all of our data. Okay, so let's run through those numbers one more time. In the cadence tests, the motor would have brought me up to those preset speed limits regardless of how much pressure I put on the pedals. I started off with no pedal assist at 9.4 miles per hour, and then in the Class 2 test, my speeds were 10 miles per hour in PAS 1, 11.9 in PAS 2, 14.9 in PAS 3, 16.9 in PAS 4, and 20 miles per hour in PAS 5. In the Class 3 cadence test, the bike was faster across the board. I averaged 13.9 miles per hour in PAS 1, 16.9 in PAS 2, 21 miles per hour in PAS 3, 23.7 in PAS 4, and a whopping 31.7 miles per hour in PAS 5. Now, let's take a second to look at those graphs before moving on to the torque sensor tests. Overall, the data looks good. It shows that the speed limits for each pedal assist setting are pretty evenly spaced, and we generally like that because A, it tends to feel intuitive, and B, it gives you quite a bit of control over your speed. Now, the Nomad dishes out more power in Class 3 mode, and I was able to exceed the 28 mile per hour limit by a pretty good margin in PAS 5. Now, I enjoy riding fast as much as the next person, but we encourage Velotric to implement more strict limits at 28 miles per hour just to ensure that the bike is street legal in more areas. Moving on to the torque sensor tests though, the bike there was responding to the amount of pressure I applied to the pedals, and the only limits in speed were the overall 20 or 28 mile per hour maximum, depending on whether I was doing the Class 2 or Class 3 test. I started off with no pedal assist there at 9.7 miles per hour, and then in the Class 2 test, I hit 15.2 miles per hour in PAS 1, 17.7 in PAS 2, and then I stayed right around the Class 2 ceiling of 20 miles per hour in PAS 3, 4, and 5. In the Class 3 test, I didn't have that limit holding me back, so I hit 16.9 miles per hour in PAS 1, 20.3 in PAS 2, 24.2 miles per hour in PAS 3, 27.9 in PAS 4, and then 30.2 miles per hour in PAS 5. Overall, I think the division of power levels felt pretty intuitive here, but I don't think that's reflected as well in the Class 2 data as it is in the Class 3 test, and I think that's primarily because I did the test in boost mode, where the motor is really kicking out everything it has. I found it pretty easy to reach 20 miles per hour, even in PAS 1 or 2, so it wasn't a surprise that PAS 3, 4, and 5 all shared the same results in the Class 2 test. The lower power levels of Eco or Trail mode felt a little bit more reserved, so I expect my results would have differed a bit more in either of those modes. In the throttle test, I think what I said was accurate about the bike feeling strong but not punchy. Fat tire bikes can quickly feel overpowered, and I like that this one has an approachable amount of power that doesn't make it feel like it's gonna take off on you or get out of control. All of that is to say that I think Velotric generally did a great job with the programming of this bike, and I do really appreciate that they're trying to cater to different riders with so many power levels to choose from, but I also have to admit that 15 total settings felt like too many options. We've tested quite a few bikes from other brands with 3 to 5 pedal assist settings with customizable power levels through their app, and we think this might be a better direction for Velotric in the future, just for the sake of user friendliness. As it is, the division of power between the bike's 5 assist levels is pretty solid. The eco riding mode felt best for those who want a relatively natural, low-key feel, boost is best for those who want the easiest possible ride, and trail mode seemed to fall between those extremes, but skewed a little bit more toward the feel of eco. We tested the Nomad 2's range in 2 separate tests, where we rode the bike on paved shared use paths until its battery was empty. We used the bike's highest power level, so that's PAS 5 in boost mode, to find its minimum range, and then we chose PAS 3 in eco mode to get its maximum range, as PAS 1 and 2 didn't quite deliver the power that we think most riders will prefer. We got 23.6 and 67.1 miles in our testing, which proves that Velotric's advertised range of 65 miles is definitely doable, and if you're willing to ride with minimal power, it may be possible to exceed that figure. Just keep in mind that we did our testing using the torque sensing mode, which should yield higher results, and we also stuck to the bike's standard Class 2 settings with a maximum of 20 miles per hour. Looking at other fat tire e-bikes we've tested, those bikes averaged 31.9 and 57.8 miles, so the Nomad 2 ended up a bit below average in its high power test, and a fair amount better than average in its low power test. All in all, that makes this bike pretty solid, especially considering that its 706 watt-hour battery is a bit small in comparison to many of its peers. The bikes we used for comparison averaged 798 watt-hours of capacity. That said, we think the Nomad's results in this test make sense based on both its speed test results and our experience on the bike. As I mentioned earlier, boost mode really doesn't hold anything back, and we found that the bike does burn through battery power fairly quickly in PAS 5, so there is some incentive to go with a lower level of power if you're looking to stretch out the battery. On the flip side, the power range of eco is functional, but still relatively low, and the bike's torque sensor helped to extend its charge by allowing its power output to fluctuate. There's actually a little warning that'll pop up in the app when switching to cadence mode that lets you know the bike won't be quite as efficient there. But the Nomad 2's battery is clearly big enough to support long rides regardless of what you use this bike for, whether you're riding it to work every day or venturing off the beaten path in the evenings or weekends. Since there are so many customization options, we might recommend doing your own range test when you find the settings that work for you based on what you're using it for. Just be sure to stay closer to home once the charge level gets low, as all fat tire e-bikes can be a bit tough to pedal once the battery dies. And then one final note, the Nomad 2 comes with a 3-amp fast charger that we're always happy to see paired with larger batteries. It can totally recharge the battery in about 5 hours, so you don't have to wait too long before getting back out there. Next, we've got our hill test that we do at a place called Hellhole Trail. The path there is paved, and it has a 12% average grade over 1/3 of a mile. That can be pretty tough for many e-bikes, although fat tire bikes like the Nomad 2 usually don't struggle much. I'll pass you over to our tester Justin for this one. We can see how the bike did with its throttle and when he pedaled in PAS 5 using boost mode.
All right, we are out on the Velotric Nomad 2 doing the hill test of Hellhole on throttle, and I am in boost mode. They have the 3 different modes: eco, trail, boost, and then 5 on torque. So this is the most powerful setting that it can get. So far up the hill, it's doing fairly decent. We're at 9.4 miles per hour, 9.1, 8.8, 8.7. Looks like it might bottom out right around 8.7 there. The motor on this is incredibly quiet. Like I can barely hear it. I hear more of the tires and the chain than anything else. So I'll let you listen through this next steep, punchy section. Yeah, so even as you increase speed, that's really kind of all you hear. Let me work around these people here. 1 second. Morning. Overall, feels very smooth, very controlled. It's definitely going to make it up Hellhole, so we'll go check the tape and see how it does on throttle, turn around, and we'll do the pedal test. Okay, we're back out now doing the pedal test on the Velotric Nomad 2, again in boost mode, torque 5, starting out right about the 6th gear, and again feels very smooth out of the gate. Right about 15.1, 14.9, 13.4, downshift just slightly, 13.1. I'm staying fairly consistent on the pedals. I'm not putting a ton in. Feels pretty natural though climbing, I will say. No lag in the response. Motor Still very quiet. I'll let you listen through this section here. See, it got down to about 12 miles per hour, but very smooth, very quiet. Let's get around these guys again. Hang on. So climbing wise, feels fantastic. We'll see what the results are, but from a feel perspective, really smooth, really well done.
Velotric really did a great job with that quiet motor. Noise isn't something that bothers me a whole lot, but I do always notice when it's not loud, and I think Justin was absolutely right in saying that the tires and chain are the only real source of noise. Anyway, Justin finished the throttle test in 1 minute and 25 seconds with an average speed of 12.8 miles per hour. His pedal test came in a bit faster at 1 minute and 12 seconds and an average of 15.1 miles per hour. Now, compared with other fat tire bikes we've tested, these numbers are pretty much right in line with the averages. The category throttle time is 1 minute and 23 seconds on throttle and 1 minute and 13 seconds pedaling. We think these results make sense based on the bike's weight and overall motor output. It's a few pounds heavier than average, its 90 newton meters of torque is spot on with the average, and its motor's peak of 1300 watts is a little on the higher side, so these things seem to balance out to give the bike a steady but not overpowered feel. Clearly, the Nomad 2 has what it takes to conquer some steep hills, so it gets a solid 2 thumbs up in this test, but it's worth pointing out that e-bikes with cadence sensors tend to be both faster in this test, and they usually deliver an easier experience overall. We tested the bike using its torque sensing mode, which is why Justin was breathing a bit heavier by the end of the test, but just keep in mind that you could easily switch to the cadence sensing mode to give yourself more of a break. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Nomad 2's ride quality, which is basically a summary of everything that contributes to how it feels to ride. Let's go out to the bike paths and talk about some of the basic things like sizing, comfort, motor engagement, and a few others, and then we can go a bit more in depth once we meet back up here. All right, let's talk about ride quality here on the Velotric Nomad 2. So this is a fat tire e-bike. So we are on the step through or ST model that is a little bit more cruiser styled than the high step. Slightly different handlebars. These have a little bit more of a sweep to them, which, honestly, I think feels really appropriate for how the rest of the bike feels. Super comfy, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So the bike has 2 frame sizes. We are on the regular, there's also a large. The ST model fits riders from 5'2" up to 6'5", split between those 2 frame sizes. Technically, this regular size frame can go as low as 4'11", but you would have to replace the suspension seat post with a non-suspension or standard seat post. In any case, I'm 5'11". I'm actually on the kind of top end of the recommended height range for the regular frame here. But yeah, I mean, it feels good. I've got full leg extension. There's about 6 inches of adjustment in saddle height. And then there's an adjustable stem, so you can kind of change your handlebar height and your reach a little bit, or adjust your riding position. So actually, where I have things set, I think when I get back to the shop, I might adjust the stem a little bit more, bring this up a little bit. I feel like I'm leaning forward a little bit more. I'd prefer to be a little bit more upright, but just as it is, my arms are kind of down and outstretched in front of me. Again, good leg extension. It feels comfortable, but I like the adjustability factor here. There's quite a little bit of tuning that you can do to dial in your fit. Let's see, moving on, we have both a suspension fork and a suspension seat post. The fork has 100 millimeters of travel, quite a bit there, big chunky fork, thick stanchions, very solid feeling. The suspension seat post is the rocker style, and that has 50 millimeters of travel there, so ultra comfortable ride. Going over bumps, you barely feel them, and the nice thick saddle helps out with that as well. But let's see, we've got 26 by 4-inch fat tires, fairly standard for a fat tire e-bike. So they have a knobby tread, so you can do some off-roading if you want, but nice and wide and stable for riding on paved surfaces as well. And then we have the 750 watt rear hub motor that powers the bike. So that has both a torque and cadence sensor that we've talked about. You can switch between those, really find the fit and feel that works for you. And I guess I wanted to show off one other feature here, and that is the cruise control mode, which is an optional setting you can turn on either in the display or the app. You can see I have the app here, kind of has the GPS going on, but then it's also kind of mirroring what the display shows as far as your pedal assist setting, riding mode, and the speed. Sorry, yeah, there we go. And let's see, so in order to engage the cruise control mode, once it's activated either in the display or the app, you hold the button on the bottom of the control panel there, and you'll see a little icon pop up right there. Looks kind of just like the one in your car, and here I'm not moving the pedals, I'm not holding the throttle lever. The bike is holding 14 miles per hour as I set it. So yeah, definitely a nice way if you just want to cruise and get some air and enjoy the scenery. You can take advantage of that, and then of course just hitting the brakes will deactivate that. But let's go ahead and bounce back to the studio. We'll talk a little bit more, and then I will see you out here again shortly to go over the Velotric app, and then we will also walk through the bike's display. To touch back on sizing, the regular size frame that we tested fits riders from 5'2" to 5'11", while the large frame goes from 5'10" to 6'5". I reached out to our contact at Velotric to ask about the 4'11" minimum that the brand advertises, and they did confirm that if you're below the 5'2" mark, the step-through frame can accommodate riders that short with a standard seat post. You might need to reach out to the company once you place an order to let them know you need that option instead of the suspension seat post that usually comes with the bike. Touching back on something I mentioned earlier, which is the 16-inch standover height on the step-through frame, which makes it super easy to get on and off this bike without swinging a leg over the saddle. This naturally makes the ST model a good choice for riders with mobility issues. As far as handling goes, this bike does feel its size and weight, so it's not the most nimble, but it does maneuver well for its size, and it trades agility for a few other things. There are 3 words that come to mind to describe fat tire e-bikes like the Nomad 2, and those are stable, powerful, and versatile. Basically, this style of bike can be ridden just about anywhere outside of dedicated mountain bike trails. Fat tire bikes can also be really confidence-inspiring for those who haven't been on a bike in a while because they feel really solid and stuck to the ground. And they're also usually great choices for riders who don't want to have to work very hard on hills, as we saw earlier in our hill test. I think the Nomad really checks all of those boxes, but it really does kick things up a notch compared to most other fat tire e-bikes with all of its integrated features and technology. One thing I haven't mentioned is the integrated Apple Find My technology, which allows you to track the bike's location as long as it's near other Apple devices with Bluetooth. But let's keep things moving and head back out to the bike paths one more time so we can talk about the Velotric app. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Velotric app here. A lot to discuss. The landing page here, fairly straightforward. We've got a picture of the bike that we're connected to. We have the name of it, which you can change. There is an indication there that we are connected to the bike through Bluetooth. And then we have the battery percentage and the odometer reading, both of which are at least very close to what the display shows. So, once you get this pulled up, you can just hit start riding, and this will track your rides. This shows you, GPS, where we are on the map, as well as some screen mirroring here with the display. And then to shut that off, you can hit pause and then hold this to stop. Now it's not going to show anything because we haven't moved, but if you do ride, it will show you, a summary of the ride that you tracked there. But back to the main panel, the bike settings menu. This is really sort of the meat and potatoes of the app. If we get in there, again, you can change the name. You have the 3 riding modes that we've talked about previously. You can switch those here as well as on the bike's control panel, and you can do that on the fly as well in either place. We also have the screen brightness setting, so just have that set to auto right now. And then this seems to be a relatively new feature in the Velotric app, which I'm happy to see. You can adjust the speed limit of the pedal assist system and the throttle separately. So, legally speaking, as Class 2s, throttles should be limited to 20 miles per hour, but you can go anywhere from 12 to 28. And then, of course, we have the bike set to Class 3 mode with pedal assist, so that's up to 28, but I can also bump that all the way down to 12. Oh no, the bike is shutting off. Well, that's okay. We will go ahead and keep going through the app here. So we have an auto power off function. You can set that anywhere from off to 60 minutes with a couple of intervals there. We have an automatic light sensor feature, so when the sun sets, the bike's lights can automatically kick on. We also have the cruise control mode that you can activate or deactivate. That's the one that I demoed earlier in the ride quality section. And then we have another cool thing here, the throttle limit. So this dictates whether the throttle speed is controlled by the pedal assist level. So as it is right now in torque mode, that is deactivated, so the throttle can go all the way up to that 20 mile per hour speed limit. But then in the cadence mode, it is tied to the preset limits within that riding mode, as we saw in the speed test. So then here you can swap between torque and cadence sensors, as you can also do in the display. And then you have your units. You can also get firmware updates here with the bike off. That's not going to connect, but I did check that earlier and we are up to date. And then you can unpair from the bike if you want. A lot of the same features are available through the bike's display, so we will check that out in a sec, but I just wanted to also pull up the sort of user profile here. So this kind of shows you a summary of your rides. You have units that you can change there, and then just some administrative stuff. Not really a whole lot going on there, but it is nice to see kind of totals of what you have done with the bike. So in any case, we will bounce back to the studio and I will show you the bike's display. All right, let's go ahead and walk through the display. So there's a lot of basic things, but then there's quite a few advanced settings as well. So you'll see the speedometer in the center. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's actually like a curved power meter that you will see when you're riding. It shows you how much power the motor's putting out. So on the left side, we have an indicator for the lights. We have the current riding mode that you can change using the back button on the underside of the control panel. And then up in the top left, you have the bike's charge. Over on the right, you have the pedal assist level that will change in color as you go through them. And then there's an indicator for which of the sensor modes we're in. We'll have to go into the display menu to swap that. But then if you hit the mode button, you can kind of scroll through some ride data. You've got your odometer, total ride time, motor temperature, controller temperature, trip distance, trip time, average speed, max speed, and then calories burned and CO2 saved. But if you hold that mode button, then we can go into the settings menu. So you can adjust the speed limit of the bike with pedal assist and throttle separately, as we've talked about. And then you hit the back button to go back, or the mode button to save any changes that you make. This is where you swap the torque or cadence sensors. You can clear your trip data, you can adjust your screen brightness, you can change the riding mode here if you don't want to just use the mode button, or sorry, the back button when you're outside of the menu. There's the rear light mode, so that's the brake light behavior, and you have 3 options there. Personally, I prefer number 3. You can adjust the low light sensor for the integrated headlight and tail light. You can change how long it takes for the bike to automatically power down if you leave it on. You can select whether or not the throttle speed is tied to your pedal assist level, and you can adjust that separately between the torque and cadence sensing modes. Personally, I really like that it is not limited in torque mode and limited in cadence mode. That sort of makes both of those modes make a little bit more sense and make them practical. So you can turn on or off the cruise control mode that I demoed back in the ride quality section there. You can connect to the app, so if you hit that, there's a QR code that'll pull up. And then you can set up the Apple Find My system for security and location tracking. You can change your units, calibrate the sensor, and then see what the current version of the firmware is used in the display. If that covers everything, let's go ahead and wrap up the review. The original version of the Nomad was the first bike I had the chance to review when I joined the team here at Electric Bike Report, so I was really excited to get my hands on this second generation model and see how much changed. I've seen Velotric grow by leaps and bounds since that time. They've gone from a brand that made solid but fairly basic e-bikes to a real leader in the industry, and I've got to say that's been really cool to see. The Nomad 2 is a perfect example of Velotric's growth, but also the brand's overall approach in making bikes with tons of mass appeal. Fat tire e-bikes tend to appeal to a fairly wide range of riders, from older folks who value their stability, to adrenaline junkies who like speed and power, to more adventurous types who want a lot of freedom in where they can roam. This bike can satisfy all of those crowds equally, with so many ways to switch up the feel of the ride, and that's a pretty tough thing to pull off. Our only real points of critique about this bike are the somewhat overwhelming number of pedal assist settings and the bike's ability to exceed 28 miles per hour. We'd prefer more strict speed limits and fewer pedal assist levels that could be tailored through the Velotric app. But otherwise, this bike is extremely responsive and comfortable, and it proved to be super capable in our testing with great programming, excellent stopping power, fantastic range, and solid climbing ability. If you ask me, it's also hard to deny that it looks pretty awesome too. Whether you're looking for a reliable daily commuter or an off-road adventure bike, we think you'd be hard-pressed to find a bike with more ways to switch things up to suit your needs and preferences. Is it the most customizable fat tire e-bike on the market? At least at the time of filming, we haven't seen another one with so many options, so there's a good chance it is. If you think this might be the bike for you, we encourage you to check out the bike's webpage using our affiliate link in the video description, or you can check out our written review at electricbikereport.com. Let us know what you think of this bike down in the comments. Feel free to send us any questions you might have, and please consider hitting that like button if you found this review helpful. But thanks for taking a ride with me today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Velotric Nomad 2.